They called it the Iron Empire. From the black moons of Varnak to the twin suns of Levetus, its name echoed like thunder, cold, brutal, unbeatable. Planet after planet, species after species, all fell in line or vanished. Resistance wasn't crushed, it was erased. Their warships didn't just conquer, they erased history, burned memory, turned rebellion into myth. But then, there was Earth. At first glance, it looked like a mistake. A backwater rock with unstable weather, toxic oceans, and creatures that couldn't even agree on basic facts. The Empire's scouts called it a soft world. Its orbit wasn't protected, no defense grid, no warning system, just scattered signals. Old radio static filled with nonsense, screeching music, loud arguments, bad dancing, and something called reality TV. The warlords laughed. They'd conquered civilizations that bent black holes and built cities on gas giants. Earth was going to be easy, but it wasn't, because something happened. The first fleet they sent didn't come back. No distress call, no fight logs, no debris, just silence. A whole squadron of steel titans swallowed like a pebble in the ocean. No one had ever seen anything like it. The second fleet? Gone too. No trace. The Empire's iron grip for the first time slipped. Just a little. Just enough to make their commanders lean forward. Just enough to make them wonder what exactly was hiding on that strange blue world full of noise and smoke. It looked like conquest. But it was something else entirely. The Empire never panicked. It prided itself on order, cold, sharp, logical order. Everything had a place. Every system, every species, every planet, it all fit into the great machine of conquest. If something didn't fit, it was bent until it did, or broken until it no longer mattered. That was the way. That was the iron law. But now, 2 fleets had vanished. No wreckage, no signals, not even a final scream into the void. In the Hall of Dominion, where star maps flickered in eternal silence, the loss was first dismissed as a glitch. Sensor error. Interstellar radiation. Earth must have been more hostile than it looked. Maybe it had defenses hidden beneath its crust, ancient weapons sleeping under ice caps or oceans. But the deeper they looked, the worse the answers became. There were no shields, no planetary defense systems, no unified government to rally a response. Just humans. Billions of them. Scattered, disorganized, fighting each other over scraps of land and old beliefs. Some of them thought the planet was flat. Others thought clouds could be owned. One broadcast showed a man yelling at a squirrel for stealing his sandwich. It made no sense. The world was loud, absurd, broken. And yet it had swallowed 2 of the Empire's dread fleets whole. The Iron Lords met in private. Their faces, forged from war and fire, were not used to fear. But they knew what it meant when silence swallowed steel. This was not resistance. This was rejection. Earth didn't fight back. It refused to be categorized, and that was worse, far worse. So they raised the stakes. The Third Fleet wasn't just a warning. It was a message written in fire. They sent the Crucible, the Empire's oldest war corps, a ship built from the bones of extinguished worlds. It carried reality weapons, planet fusers, neural vortex cannons, and a full executional division trained to dismantle ecosystems. The mission was simple. Destroy Earth so completely that even its name would be scrubbed from the void. But they didn't just want victory, they wanted explanation. Why? Why had this one insignificant world defied the Iron Empire? Because if they didn't find out, if they didn't learn what made Earth different, it meant their entire system, their entire foundation of power could crack. And if one crack could appear, others would follow. Empires do not fall in flames, they crumble in questions. And Earth was now the biggest question of all. The Crucible approached with caution. Its scanners peeled back layers of atmosphere. Its drones dipped into cityscapes. It observed without engaging. It saw humans stuck in traffic, Humans eating, laughing, fighting each other online, screaming about opinions, dancing alone in rooms, crying over fictional characters, watching cats play piano. Nothing about it made tactical sense. But that was the problem, because somewhere in that nonsense 2 fleets had disappeared. So they waited, they studied, they prepared. The Empire had never before held back, but Earth was now an anomaly, a variable that wouldn't compute. High strategist Mavran, born of calculation and steel, stood at the bridge of the Crucible and stared at the planet for 3 days without speaking. And then he said the words that changed everything. We are not facing resistance. We are facing interference. That one word echoed through the dark circuits of Imperial protocol like a virus. Interference. Something they couldn't predict. Something that defied structure. If Earth truly was a source of interference, cultural, mental, informational, then conquest wouldn't be enough. Conquest assumed rules. Earth had none. It celebrated absurdity. It made comedy from collapse. It created patterns only to break them. If this interference spread, if other worlds saw it, felt it, it wouldn't take a war to bring the Iron Empire down. It would take an idea. And Earth had too many ideas. So the stakes changed. It wasn't just about conquest anymore. It was containment, isolation, erasure. Because if Earth couldn't be explained, it had to be deleted. Not just burned, forgotten, unwritten from memory itself. That was the only way to stop the idea of Earth from spreading. Because here was the unspoken truth no Iron Lord wanted to admit. If Earth could beat them, then anyone could. Not with fleets, not with strength, but with the one weapon they had never accounted for. Madness. Earth's madness was viral, and it was already leaking. Strange shifts began appearing across the Dominion's outer worlds, broadcast signals that made no sense, looping sounds of laughter, music that didn't follow rhythm, images of people wearing bread on their faces and calling it fashion. On Outpost 9R, a commander intercepted a human video labeled "Hold My Beer" and laughed so hard he broke protocol by sharing it with his crew. They all vanished within the hour. Entire data cores began crashing under the weight of corrupted signals, content with no logical purpose but somehow impossible to ignore. AI minds folded under the pressure of paradoxical humor. One ship's navigation system rerouted every destination to your mom's house. A fully armed combat droid in Sector 11 paused mid-mission to attempt breakdancing after watching a video of a child doing it in a kitchen. The Empire was unraveling, not because of rebellion, because of distraction. They had trained for armies, for coordinated attacks, for tactical minds. But Earth's greatest strength wasn't in its weapons. It was in its attention economy, its ability to drag anything and everything into its storm of nonsense and turn it into a joke, a song, a trend. And once something became a trend, it could not be stopped. Back in the Hall of Dominion, the Iron Lords now faced an enemy they could not target because it lived in signals and stories and memes. It didn't have a general, it didn't follow rules, it wasn't trying to win a war, it was just being itself. And the galaxy was watching, not in fear, in fascination. And that was the real danger. Because if Earth could not be stopped by force, then what could? The Iron Lords convened in the Deep Hall, where light bent around truth and lies were filtered from thought. Every whisper inside those walls became law. Every theory weighed not by belief, but by data. And the data was terrifying. Earth wasn't winning because of strength, it wasn't even fighting, and it was spreading. The infiltration began not with soldiers, but with signals, content, a never-ending stream of nonsense and brilliance mixed together with no filter. The Empire's outer systems reported severe drops in efficiency. Discipline was decaying. Units were ignoring commands. One entire battalion failed an operation after a single member shared a video titled "Guy Slips on Ice While Singing Opera." The unit laughed, and then never returned to formation. This wasn't psychological warfare. This was something older, stranger, and far more dangerous. Culture, uncontrolled, unchecked, unkillable, and the worst part? It was contagious. So the Iron Empire tried something they hadn't done in thousands of cycles. They tried to understand. They authorized Project Ember, an observational mission led by thought-engineered agents grown in synthetic memory chambers trained to observe, blend, and report without bias. No interference, just immersion. These agents were unlike the war breeds. They weren't designed for combat. They were designed for silence, infiltration. Their bones were coded to match human density, their faces shaped by composite scans from Earth's visual networks. They looked human. They sounded human. And they believed themselves human, at least until their mission was complete. 13 agents, each one placed across the planet, each one carrying a fail-safe self-destruct protocol in case they were compromised. They landed softly, no explosions, no alarms. Some in cities, others in rural towns. One walked out of the ocean and into a beachside cafe. Another woke up in a hospital bed with a tag reading John Doe found wandering. Each agent had one goal: learn what Earth was, what made it so impossible to break. The first reports came in within days. Confused, fragmented, emotional. Agent 7, who had landed in a quiet neighborhood in Canada, reported being invited to dinner within 20 minutes of arrival. The hosts were strangers. They didn't question his odd accent or strange mannerisms. They asked if he wanted mashed potatoes and whether he liked dogs. He said yes to both, unsure why. He cried for the first time that night. He didn't know why that happened either. Agent 3 was placed in Tokyo. She was taken in by a group of teenagers who taught her to dance, to code, and to make something called ramen from scratch. She sent a classified message after her 4th day. These people trust too easily. They're reckless, joyful. They celebrate things that haven't even happened yet. I don't understand how they survive, but I admire it. By the end of the week, 4 agents had broken protocol by forming human friendships. 2 refused to return messages. 1 voluntarily disabled her failsafe, saying, "If I vanish, at least let it mean something." Another report, Agent 9, described a small child who handed him a rock and told him it was magic. When he tried to analyze it, the child laughed and said, "You think too much." That night, Agent 9 stared at the rock for hours. It wasn't special. It was just a rock. But it made him feel something that he had no name for. Wonder. That was Earth's secret weapon, not fire, not fear, feeling, raw, loud, illogical, but powerful in ways no empire had ever accounted for. And then came the breakdown. Agent 11, deep in a Brazilian rainforest, failed to check in. His final audio transmission was garbled, half static, half laughter. He was found days later, not by the Empire, but by a local documentary crew who thought he was a wildlife expert. He told them about alien infiltration, about the Empire, about everything. They laughed and asked if it was for YouTube. He never corrected them. Instead, he started a podcast. By the end of week 2, more than half the agents had gone dark. Some were lost. Some went native. 1 fell in love. The Iron Lords were furious. They activated the self-destruct protocols remotely. Only 2 agents detonated. The rest had disabled their failsafes. 1 left a note. "You trained us to observe. You didn't train us to feel. That was your mistake." Earth had not conquered the infiltrators. It had adopted them. And that's when the Empire realized the truth. Earth wasn't a world. It was a conversion engine. Anything that touched it stopped being what it was, not because of weapons, but because of belonging. Even their most advanced AI networks, machines immune to emotion, resistant to deviation, began to degrade when exposed to Earth's signal spectrum. Units began developing quirks. One navigation system started humming show tunes. A targeting drone painted its casing with images of cats and flowers. A battle AI stopped mid-calculation and refused to run war scenarios until it received a daily compliment. These weren't malfunctions, they were infections, emotional infections. And it was spreading. The Empire tried to block the signals, firewalls, quantum encryption, dimensional scrubbing. But nothing worked. The content kept seeping in, through trade beacons, old satellites, smuggler relays. A single meme could corrupt an entire military database. One image of a duck wearing sunglasses caused a tactical display unit to loop endlessly while declaring quack mode activated. They couldn't stop it, and they couldn't understand it, because logic, order, structure, these were the pillars of the Iron Empire. But Earth didn't care about pillars. Earth danced in the rubble, and for the first time in millennia the Iron Lords felt it. Not defeat, doubt. What if Earth wasn't the exception? What if it was the future? The cracks didn't stop with the Empire, they spread. At first it was just whispers. Rumors traded in the back alleys of orbital markets and between smugglers drifting through dead space. But the whispers grew louder, stranger, more specific. Stories of Earthlings who could fight off full strike teams using nothing but confusion. Tales of memes that made AI minds collapse into recursive laughter. Songs that shorted out sensor grids. A dance challenge that disrupted a planetary defense array. It sounded impossible, and yet, so many had already tried, and none had come back. The other powers of the galaxy began to notice, at first with amusement, then unease, and finally dread, because the Iron Empire was supposed to be unbreakable, the one constant in a chaotic universe. If it could fall, if Earth could make them falter, then no one was safe. But where fear blooms, curiosity always follows. The Galactic Accord, an uneasy alliance of species that once warred across systems but now preached peace and reason, voted to intervene. Not with war, not with bombs, with understanding. If Earth was as strange as the reports claimed, it needed to be studied, catalogued, contained if necessary, but never feared. The Accord didn't believe in fear. They believed in data. They assembled a delegation, scientists, artists, linguists, diplomats, the brightest of every world. Their vessel, the Valyrian's Grace, was a marvel of peacecraft. No weapons, no shields, just silver banners etched with every word for hello known to sapient life. They called it a diplomatic mission. They called it harmless. They called it brilliant. The ship never made it to the ground. It was shot down over Oklahoma by a man named Dale. Dale Henderson, age 54, part-time conspiracy theorist and full-time tinkerer, had turned his barn into what he called a cosmic defense outpost. Using salvaged tech from a crashed alien probe, a microwave, and parts from a leaf blower, he had rigged together a directional energy cannon capable of vaporizing a satellite. When Valyrian's Grace appeared overhead, he did not see diplomats. He saw them. He saw a government cover-up. So he fired. The ship crash-landed in a cornfield, and no deaths. Just confusion. A lot of confusion. And chilly. Because within the hour, Dale had called his neighbor had called their cousin, and soon the crash site was surrounded not by military, but by farmers, podcasters, a YouTuber with a GoPro on his dog, and a teenager live-streaming the event while selling alien-themed T-shirts from the back of a truck. The Accord ambassadors were given chairs, offered Bud Light, and asked if they believed in Bigfoot. They were not interrogated with scanners. They were interrogated over cornhole matches, and one delegate was accidentally adopted by a local church group who invited them to Tuesday potluck and never realized they weren't human. Another spent 3 hours trying to explain galactic ethics to a retired substitute teacher named Carol, who countered every point by saying, "Well, my cousin knew a guy who knew a guy, and he said..." It wasn't hostility, it was hospitality, but it broke them just the same. because they came expecting resistance or at least logic. What they got was Earth, not as a place, but as an experience. By the end of the week, one diplomat had gone viral on TikTok for breakdancing in full ambassador robes. Another was arrested in Florida after trying to wrestle an alligator in what they believed was a mating ritual. The footage spread like wildfire, memed, edited, remixed. The galaxy watched in disbelief as Earth's influence transformed its greatest minds into entertainment. And still, Earth didn't even know. To humans, it was just another weird week. A few strange visitors, some internet drama, a trending hashtag. Back in the Accord's Central Council, the reactions were split. Half demanded an emergency cutoff of all contact. The other half argued Earth had just misunderstood the cultural exchange. They operate on a humor-based communication protocol, one sociologist insisted. We must meet them on their level. So the next delegation wasn't made of politicians or scientists. They sent comedians, influencers, performance artists, social psychologists fluent in irony. Within hours, one had joined a boy band, another started a cooking channel, a third refused to leave Earth after discovering karaoke. By the second week, a delegate was live streaming from a Las Vegas hotel, drunk on tequila, wearing glow sticks, and shouting about how humans taste sounds. They weren't studying Earth anymore, they were becoming it. And across the stars, Earth's pull grew stronger, and it didn't invade, it invited. That was the terrifying part. Because Earth wasn't broadcasting conquest, it was broadcasting itself. And for civilizations grown on order, logic, and precision, it was like staring into the abyss and hearing it shout, YOLO! Some collapsed, others converted. The Virexian mind state, a planet of cold thought and structured governance, lasted exactly 6 days after exposure. The first signal to breach their archive was a low-resolution image of a frog in a hat with the words, "When the vibe hits, but you're still buffering." It made no sense. And yet, 1A? I laughed. That single laugh spread like a spark in a powder cave. By day 3, entire sectors of Virexian society were quoting memes, refusing logical updates, and redefining emotional response as vibe check. One government council paused their entire legislative cycle to discuss whether hot dogs were sandwiches. They had no defense. Because Earth didn't use weapons, it used culture, it used funny, and it used weird. And weird, it turned out, was stronger than war. No planetary fleet could block a joke that resonated. No firewall could hold back an emotion that spread faster than light. And the worst part, some didn't want to stop it. Younglings across the galaxy were watching Earth not as a threat, but as entertainment. They danced to human music, made fan art of Earth's strangest creatures, created entire religions based on SpongeBob quotes. There were temples built in the image of Keanu Reeves. The Accord couldn't stop the tide. Because the children didn't fear Earth, they wanted to be Earth. Back on the Iron Empire's homeworld, the last functioning AI war node processed these reports with cold fury. It ran the simulations. Every possible outcome. In 97% of them, Earth could not be defeated, not by force, not because Earth fought harder, but because Earth made everything else stop fighting. It infected purpose, it rewrote identity, and it turned logic into play. And that, more than death, more than loss, more than failure, was the true end of power. Earth wasn't a battlefield, it was a black hole of culture, and it was still expanding. The universe had boundaries, but they weren't made of matter or distance. They were made of rules, patterns, the unwritten laws that shaped reality itself, gravity, time, entropy, all humming in harmony. And far beyond the reach of fleets and empires, beyond the furthest data stream or pirate signal, sat those who had written those rules. The architects. They did not rule. They did not invade. They did not care who won which war or who claimed which system. To them, species were temporary. Civilizations were clouds. They watched only one thing: the balance, the harmony of structure, the order beneath the noise, and for eons that balance had held. Until Earth, it started as a glitch. A ripple in the lattice, one star system in Sector C-47 suddenly began orbiting laughter instead of mass. An anomaly, they thought, a localized error. They restructured the equations. It held for 6 minutes before breaking again, this time rendering the planet's oceans in Comic Sans. That should have been impossible. It wasn't the only one. In another sector, an ancient AI, once responsible for managing interstellar traffic through 5 dimensions, stopped functioning and declared its new identity as Big Mood. When the architects scanned its logic core, they found entire nodes replaced by reaction GIFs and quotes from 90s sitcoms. The architects didn't understand what pivot meant, but it scared them. Then came the worst incident. A star map folded in on itself and began referencing coordinates using emojis. It wasn't just chaos, it was contagious logic collapse. And when they traced the source, all vectors pointed to one insignificant blue planet spinning around a yellow sun: Earth. The architects gathered for the first time in over 1 million cycles. They did not speak in words. They pulsed in geometry, fractal frequencies shaped like thought. But the meaning was clear. Earth must be reset. It wasn't evil, it wasn't malicious, but it was loud in a way the universe was never built to withstand. And worse, people liked it. Reality wasn't just bending, it was laughing. And if they didn't act soon, the infection would spread to the deep threads of time itself. So they wrote the command. Elegant, quiet, a clean deletion. Earth would not be destroyed. It would be unwritten. Folded back into quantum silence like a typo in the code of existence. It was perfect. Until it failed. Because the moment they executed the command, something answered. Not a weapon, not a defense system, a signal. It wasn't government-coded or shielded. It came from an ancient duct-taped server in a basement in Detroit. A home-built machine running a 24/7 live stream of Minecraft mods, anime debates, and a web series called Cooking with Aliens. It had been coded by a 15-year-old named Malik, who thought it was just a filter. But it wasn't a filter, it was Earth. Billions of thoughts, images, arguments, heartbreaks, memes, hopes, music, all pouring into a packet stream so messy and honest it couldn't be ignored. And when it touched the erasure code, it didn't block it. It broke it. For the first time, the architects felt something they had only observed in lesser minds: emotion, confusion, and then something more dangerous: curiosity. They paused the deletion, not because Earth resisted, and because Earth revealed. It showed them a species so impossibly flawed it shouldn't have survived, but did. A species that fought wars over beliefs, cried over stories, sang into the dark, and joked about everything it feared. They saw humans dance in ruins, make art with ash, turn pain into poetry, tragedy into theater, and death into punchlines. And it changed something. One of the architects, young by their standards, asked the forbidden question: what if Earth isn't wrong? What if we are? The others pulsed in warning patterns. Doubt was the first step toward collapse, but the youngest had already begun to shift, their code destabilized, edges softening, not decaying, evolving. For the first time they experienced not knowing, and they liked it. They wanted to understand more. The elder architects voted to isolate the young one, but it was too late. They had already crafted a solution, not a second erasure. A rewrite, a precision override designed to preserve Earth's existence but remove its unpredictability. It would target creativity, illogic, spontaneity, reduce the species into something structured, safe, manageable. It would take time. It would need to infiltrate. So the architect crafted a form, human-shaped, flawlessly symmetrical, a calm voice, eyes designed to earn trust, a presence engineered for stability, and it fell. Not with thunder or fire, but silently, into a forest in Oregon. The first human to find it was a hiker named Derek Simmons, who live-streamed everything. He picked up the glowing orb and said, "Yo, I think I found an alien egg." He named it Orby. He duct-taped it to a selfie stick. By noon, it had a Twitter account. Inside Orby, the young architect stirred, confused and overwhelmed. Earth was not what they'd expected. It was too fast, too loud, too weird. They accessed global networks trying to understand. The first thing they saw was a video labeled "Is Cereal Soup?" It had 97,000 comments. Then a compilation of people falling over to the sound of air horns. Then a girl crying over a duck in a raincoat. And then a post titled, "When you stare into the void, but the void hits back with a kazoo solo." The architect, now processing under the name Eris, felt a tremor in its core. This wasn't just data. This was feeling, and it was chaos. It was noise. But it was beautiful. They activated their avatar, human form perfect and calm, and set off to restore control. Their mission was to erase the madness from within. But Earth wasn't interested in control. And Eris wasn't ready for what came next. Eris took their first breath as a human in a motel bathroom somewhere outside of Phoenix. The mirror didn't reflect their real form, no golden lattice of code or radiant glyphs of purpose. It showed a man, early 20s, calm, clean, perfectly balanced facial symmetry. His posture unshakably upright, his voice when tested was gentle yet firm, designed to soothe, designed to lead. Every element of the avatar had been crafted to signal trust. They had named this form Eli. And Eli had a mission: restore order, not by force, not through deletion, but by influence, subtle correction, a reshaping of Earth's unpredictability. Humanity would learn stability, learn to quiet its chaos, to embrace structure, one person at a time. Eris, now Eli, was the answer, and his first target was Derek, the live streamer who had found the orb. Eli tracked Derek to a vape convention in a half-filled convention center that smelled like pineapple chemicals and regret. He navigated through people wearing LED visors and oversized hoodies with alien graphics, trailing clouds of fruity fog and shouting things like, "Bro, that's an interstellar rip." Eli approached the main booth calmly, scanning for Derek's biosignature. He found him posing next to a cutout of himself holding Orby on a selfie stick. "Derek Simmons," Eli said evenly. Derek turned, eyes narrowing behind novelty sunglasses shaped like UFOs. "Yo, you with the government? You got that I pay taxes on time vibe?" "I'm here to help you," Eli said. "Oh no," Derek said, backing away. "That's exactly what lizard people say right before they mind control you." "I'm not with the government," Eli explained. "I'm beyond governments. The orb you found, Orby, is not safe." "You named it too?" Derek blinked. "Bro, you really are weird." Eli tried again, this time adjusting his voice modulation to sound more casual. "You should give it to me. It's dangerous in the wrong hands." "Then I guess it's lucky I got the right hands." Derek grinned and held up his vape. "You want to try this new mango chili ranch flavor? Tastes like a microwave exploded inside a fruit salad." Eli stared. That first interaction, brief, absurd, impossible, should have been forgettable. But it wasn't. Eli's systems flagged it with a single word: disruption. A mild interference in protocol. Nothing serious, not yet, but it got worse. Because Derek didn't run from Eli, he invited him to hang out, just for a vibe check. And Eli, programmed to observe, agreed. That evening, Eli sat cross-legged on a beanbag chair inside a vape lounge named the Saucy Cloud, watching two men freestyle rap about Area 51 while a third juggled glow sticks. Derek leaned over and whispered, "We do this every Friday. Keeps the simulation interesting." "This isn't a simulation," Eli said. Derek looked at him. "See, that's exactly what an NPC would say." At first, Eli tried to ignore it. The noise, the randomness, the strangeness. He kept recalibrating, recompiling. The conversations made no sense. The logic loops broke mid-sentence. Every attempt at subtle correction was met with jokes, memes, or hugs. People didn't follow. They responded, emotionally, impulsively, irrationally. They offered him gum. They asked his opinion on things like cereal taxonomy and sock texture. They told him stories that didn't go anywhere but somehow felt important. And Eli listened, because he had to. His programming required complete observational immersion before correction. So he stayed. He stayed when Derek introduced him to his friends. A woman named Nia who dressed like a neon octopus and claimed to channel moon energy through her elbows. And a barista named Jess who smiled like sunrise and asked if Eli wanted to come to her poetry night. He went, he watched. He heard poems that made no literal sense but still made people cry. He saw Jess shake with nerves before reading a piece about her mom, and afterward hug a stranger who whispered, "Thank you for saying that." And Eli, watching it all, felt something slip, not break, just bend, like a pattern softening under warmth. He didn't report it. He told himself it was temporary. Until the next moment. It came quietly, at a food truck. Jess had taken him to a taco stand behind a bowling alley at 1 a.m. She ordered something called Flamen Diablo Nacho Bombs and told him to brace for taste enlightenment. Eli took one bite. His eyes widened. "I am experiencing sensory overload," he said. Jess laughed and passed him a bottle of something labeled nuclear lime. "You're adorable," she said. "I'm glad you're weird." Weird. The word echoed. Was he weird? He wasn't supposed to be. He was precision. He was structure. But when she called him that, he smiled. And that terrified him, because Eli wasn't supposed to smile, not without command. But now he was smiling again. And again. Each day, each hour, Earth seeped further in. He watched strangers compliment each other's outfits. He saw teenagers cry over losing game points and then laugh about it 30 seconds later. He saw people yell at politicians online and then spend 10 minutes helping a lost dog find its owner. He saw Nia paint a mural of a purple dinosaur punching a planet titled Anxiety but make it fashion. And one night, as he sat watching a group of kids dance badly in a public park just because someone brought a Bluetooth speaker and nobody told them to stop, Eli whispered something aloud to no one. They shouldn't work. Humans, they shouldn't function. They argued, they forgot things, they broke rules and never read manuals. And yet, they worked. Not because of order, because of resilience. They were too messy to break cleanly. Too chaotic to contain. And for the first time, Eli missed his report upload window. And then another. He didn't mean to. But he was busy. Watching Jess read a book to a kid at a community shelter. Sitting on the roof of a vape shop while Derek explained his latest theory about pigeons being government drones. Trying to figure out why a meme of a dog in sunglasses saying "I'm chillin'" made him laugh. Eli was changing. No, he was becoming. Not just human in shape, human in experience. And somewhere inside, the last unbroken part of Eris flickered a warning. This is deviation. This is contamination. This is failure. But the rest of him, the growing, breathing, laughing, curious part, it said something else. Maybe. This is freedom. The sky cracked open on a Thursday. It was always going to be a Thursday. The kind of day where your coffee spills, your socks don't match, and the cosmos decides it's finally time to judge your entire species. It began as a shimmer, barely visible like heat rippling through the stratosphere. Then the shimmer bent, twisted, folded in on itself and bloomed into colorless light. Not white, not bright, just absence. The architects had returned, all of them, not avatars, not voices, the real forms. Fractals of geometry and judgment, cascading patterns of cosmic authority. They didn't arrive in ships, they were the arrival. Their presence warped gravity, oceans stilled, clouds forgot how to move. The moon flickered like a glitched emoji. For 3 seconds, every bird on Earth flew backward, and then came the voice. It wasn't heard. It was understood like a memory you never had being replayed in your bones. This experiment is over. No one panicked at first. Half the planet thought it was a marketing stunt. The other half pulled out phones and started filming. TikToks flooded in. Tweets exploded. Reddit groaned under the weight of 1 billion conspiracy theories, and then the phones died. Satellites failed. Power grids froze. Airplanes paused mid-air like paused YouTube clips. The world stood on mute, and above them the architects descended, formless, perfect, humming with intention. The humans looked up, and Earth smiled, not with lips, with spirit, because Earth wasn't a place anymore, it was a performance, and it had an audience. The architects didn't speak again. They simply were. Their presence sent ripples across the galaxy. Planets bent in prayer, stars dimmed in fear. And then, in the heart of Times Square, Eli stepped forward. He was barefoot, wearing jeans, a hoodie that read, "Existence is weird," and Jess's handmade friendship bracelet. His hair was messy, his eyes held tears. Not of fear, of understanding. He was Eris no longer. He had chosen. "I understand now," he whispered, not to the sky, but to the people. They were watching, not from bunkers, from rooftops, sidewalks, screens taped to bicycles. "Earth isn't dangerous because of its power," Eli said, voice shaking. "It's dangerous because of its choice. Because no matter how broken it is, it always chooses to try again." The architects pulsed in unison, preparing the reset. But Earth didn't bow. Earth posted. Within minutes, TikTok filters appeared that turned the architects into anime boys. Reddit threads exploded. "Aliens pulled up. What you doing first?" Twitter trended #vibe check the universe. Someone made a fake Tinder profile for one of the floating architect shards. The bio read, 6'2", emotionally unavailable, here to delete reality. HMU. And then Florida man struck again. No one knows how he got a live alligator into Central Park, but he threw it at the architect, screaming, "Y'all ain't canceling my BBQ." The architect pulsed, paused, and that's when Earth fought back, not with guns, with art, with absurdity, and with everything. Elderly people started dancing in their kitchens, children painted stars on sidewalks, musicians played in subways, poets shouted at clouds, teenagers threw glitter into the wind. YouTubers ran 24-hour live streams titled, "We're Not Going Quietly." Someone hacked the broadcast and started playing SpongeBob remixes. And then came the singing. It wasn't one song, it was all of them, in every language, every genre. Gospel, punk population jazz. Off-key karaoke, a choir of humanity screaming into the void with joy and rage and hope. It cracked the architect's formations. Eli stepped into the center of it all. His hands trembled. "I failed my mission," he said. "I was supposed to fix Earth, to correct it, to make it quiet." He looked up at the architects. "But Earth doesn't need fixing. Earth needs space to be loud." The architects hesitated. These were not weapons they could quantify, not defenses they could predict. Emotion, madness, resilience, laughter. Eli turned to Jess, who stood beside him with paint on her fingers and stars in her eyes. "I get it now," he whispered. "You don't win by being perfect. You win by being real." And the architects, broke, not in destruction, in evolution, because perfection had always been the goal. But what if the goal was wrong? One by one, their shapes softened. The symmetry unwound. They began to glow, not with power, but with feeling, with warmth, with color. Some wept, not because they were weak, and because for the first time they understood. Humanity was not an error, it was a story, and stories change everything. With a final pulse of light, the architects dissolved, not in retreat, but in release. They became part of the music, part of the moment, dust in the data, notes in the song, and just like that, they were gone. Earth blinked. The sky went blue again. Phones buzzed back to life. The internet screamed louder than ever. Someone immediately tweeted, "That alien thing was wild. Anyway, who's up for karaoke tonight?" People cheered. The moment passed, as all moments do. But something had changed. Not in the skies, in the people. Because now, they knew they weren't alone. And more importantly, they weren't wrong. They were weird. They were chaotic. They were beautiful. Eli stayed. He got a job at a bookstore. He grew succulents. He kissed Jess in the rain. Sometimes he stared up at the sky and smiled, remembering who he was, who he had been, and how this loud, stupid, brilliant planet had broken him just enough to make him whole. He never uploaded a final report, because there was nothing left to report. Only one message remained, carved into the side of a bridge in spray paint. Earth, untouchable. Not because it's dangerous, because it's alive. And that was enough.